So you have chickens, right?
Yeah, yeah. So they're at my parents' house and they are pretty fun. It's hard to have like I'm a super animal lover, so it's hard to have the outdoor animals because sometimes things happen to them.
Yeah, yeah. Has anything happened to the chickens that you've had so far?
We've had like a couple hawks eat them,
Oh,
which
really?
yeah, and there's like not a lot. I think we had like a fox get some of them once, and so we redid the coop. But like with hawks, it's like the only way to really protect them is if you keep them in the coop all day, which
Yeah.
I mean, I think they'd rather be out in the yard, so it doesn't happen that often, but once in a while I find one with its head ripped off. So it's a little
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. So do you have like a fence around the coop at all, or is it just like the coop and then it's just completely open?
So there's like a big like 6 foot wooden fence, like that fence is in the backyard. And then we have the coop where they nest, and then we have
Hmm.
they have like a little area in there too with like their food and water.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because we just got chickens like 3 months ago ish.
Oh, you did? I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
we have four chickens and we have like a coop and then underneath the coop there's like a little cage area with the food and water like you said. And then
Yeah.
we have kind of like a 4 foot fence that's maybe like 4 feet around there. So we don't really have them like wander out the whole entire yard, but they're kind of outside the cage area most of the time. But we put it underneath like two big trees.
Hmm.
So we feel like that kind of protects it from the hawks.
Yeah, it definitely does. So, because they're always like it's so funny because they'll come out of the coop and then they'll run over into like the garden area with like the big bushes and stuff because like
Yeah,
they know that when like the hawks and stuff can see them when they're out in the open.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's awesome.
scary. I'm hoping nothing happens to ours, but
Yeah.
um there
Are yours laying?
no, not yet.
Did you get them as chicks or
Yeah, we got them as chicks.
okay, cool. So how old are they now?
They're a little over 3 months, like almost 3.5 months. It was the beginning of June when we got them.
Okay, so I got more probably in April, so about the same time, and those ones aren't laying yet, but it should be pretty soon.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping it'll be cool to have,
Yeah,
when they
do yours
start laying eggs.
do yours let you like pick them up and stuff?
There's one that does a little more than the others, just
Uh-huh.
because when it was a chick, when it was little, for some reason it would always get poop stuck on its butt. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's
so,
sick.
so my wife, like every single day, multiple times a day, she would have to pick it up and like move the poop out of the way. And so I think it got like used to her picking it up. So it lets us pick it up a little more often, but the other three, they just run away.
Yeah, you got to like train them when they're really little, otherwise there's no chance that they're like pick them up. Yeah.
It's kind of sad because they're kind of cool. Like I would like to be able to just walk up and pick them up anytime, but
Yeah. Yeah, they're fun. I was afraid of birds before we got chickens and now I'm like obsessed with them. So,
I was afraid that like when you try to pick them up, they'd start pecking at you and it would hurt and everything. But I don't know, they don't really do that.
yeah, yeah, they're fun. I didn't know that. That's cool. That
Yeah.
you, that
So
you guys
do you have names for all of your chickens?
yeah.
What are the
Yeah.
names?
So, well, because we've had a few die, but
Yeah.
a lot of them, like my coworkers, wanted me to name them the chickens after them, and I'm like, all right, that's
Oh
fine,
my
but
God.
if they die, you can't be upset about it.
Yeah.
So we have, let me think who we have right now. Well, one's name's Angela. We have a TikTok Taylor. That's after one of my coworkers.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
Myrtle. There's one named Noodles.
That's hilarious.
Pasta, yeah. Buffy, and then Carol. Yeah. So we've had them for a few years, like multiple chickens. So
Hmm.
it's hard to name, them after. You'll know once something happens to one or two of yours and you replace them. You're like, oh, got to think of another name.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we have four. We have Pete, Penelope, Phoebe, and gosh, I can't think of the fourth one.
I know it's hard unless you're looking at them, I feel like.
I don't know. We talked about putting like little tags or something on their feet when they were little so we could tell them apart, but we never did. So,
Yeah.
um,
What kind of chickens are they?
I believe they're the same kind that you have. What are they called? Does it start with an R?
Like Rhode Island Red.
And no, I don't remember what it is. I don't know.
But do you know what color eggs they lay?
I believe brown.
Brown? Okay.
Yeah.
There's like a bunch of different kinds.
Yeah. I don't know. It was something that my wife, she was super bored because she had a break before starting her residency. So she was at home doing nothing. So she's like, oh, let's get some chickens. So she like did all the research and bought them. And now she's in residency and I'm taking care of them most of the time.
The chicken dad, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. Um, but I'm super excited to have you on for the listeners. This is Dahlia Gordon. She is a registered dietitian. We kind of, I guess, went to school together a little bit. We didn't really have classes together. Well, virtually, we kind of did.
Yeah.
But you became a registered dietitian, what, like 2 years ago?
Yep. It'll be 2 years. Yeah. Just 2 years. So I graduated May 2 years ago.
Cool. So I really wanted to have you on because I thought it would provide a unique perspective because I feel like you've worked with a wide variety of individuals with their nutrition. So just to kind of pick your brain and see, what you've ran into and how your experience has been. So before I start asking you some questions, just let the audience kind of know like what there is to know about Dahlia, where you're from, how you got into nutrition, what made you get into dietetics.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Des Moines, Iowa, a little suburb, and I grew up with food allergies, and so that's kind of what sparked my interest in nutrition. And then in undergrad, I went to LaSalle University, and I was on the swim team there. And while I was on the swim team and practicing, I started to realize how much the food that I was eating was affecting my performance. And that's what really got me excited about nutrition. And like, it kind of clicked that there's really something to this. And then I went to grad school and did my dietetic internship at Ohio University. And so now I'm living in Charlotte, North Carolina. My family lives out here, so that's what brought me down here. And I will have to say I love the weather compared to everywhere else that I've lived. Yeah. So I like it down here.
Yeah. So what kind of allergy did you have growing up?
So I had a wheat and soy allergy growing up. And food allergies weren't super, like, there wasn't a lot of information about them. And so I was just put on an elimination diet, and I didn't eat wheat or soy for a really long time. Mm-hmm. I had issues with seasonal allergies too, so I was always on allergy shots. So that's kind of where my interest in nutrition came from.
Yeah. So was it hard kind of growing up with that allergy and having to like pick certain foods, and avoid that?
Yeah, and like, especially like I would always have to bring my lunch to school and make sure that there wasn't things that I was allergic to in the foods. And as I got older, which is pretty common for food allergies to be less serious as you get older. But when I was in college, I think is when it was really difficult, because back when I was an undergrad, they didn't have where you can get online and look at the ingredients and the nutrition calls, which is like awesome now. And I tell my new college kids that. And so that was difficult, and especially traveling with the team and making sure that there was foods that I could eat. My coach did a really good job of helping me with that. But that was definitely difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure. So where are you now? You finished your dietetic internship a couple of years ago and became a registered dietitian. Like, where are you working right now? What jobs have you had kind of leading up to this point?
Yeah, so I'm actually still in my first job after becoming a dietitian. And I love it. I work down in Charlotte, North Carolina for a company called Total Nutrition Technology. And basically it's like a big private practice. I say big, it's probably 25 providers. And we just help people live healthier lifestyles through food and nutrition.
Cool. So what kind of population do you typically work with? Like, or are the dietitians there Do certain ones focus on certain populations, or do you get like kind of a mix each person?
Yeah, so we definitely get a mix, but everyone kind of has their little niche that they
Okay.
work in. So I obviously like working with food allergies just because I have experience with it. And then I work a lot with other like gut health issues and then sports nutrition.
Cool. So what's kind of is there like a typical age range that you kind of work with? Do you work with kids at all?
So sometimes I work with kids, and with kids, it can either be with sports. So I have a couple like high school age kids that are really into athletics. And so just helping them kind of optimize their performance with nutrition. The biggest population that I work with is adults though. So I specialize in those things, but we also do a lot with like general wellness. So some people come in just wanting to learn more about nutrition. Obviously, a lot of like weight loss or like building muscle and that kind of thing. And then the typical like high blood pressure and or
Mhm.
high cholesterol, things like that. I see a lot of that too.
Yeah. So what do you feel like is probably the biggest issue or thing that someone struggles with their nutrition that you kind of run into with the clients that you work with?
So I think the biggest thing, and I'm sure everyone that is a dietitian sees this, there's just so much information out there that anyone can put any information on the internet, whether
Hmm.
it's true or not. And so I feel like people are just really confused about, what is actually healthy and what they should be eating. And I think fad diets can kind of suck people in. And so I think just the overall confusion is probably the biggest like overall issue that I see.
Yeah, I'm sure it's super difficult. You're trying to teach certain things, principles with nutrition, but then you have someone in their other ear from the media online, or maybe it's a coworker telling them other things that aren't necessarily true. And you have to try to break that barrier and like build extra trust. Like, I mean, it's probably hard to build trust with them that's more than what they have with like maybe a family member that's telling them something else. So I'm sure that's
Right.
probably a huge struggle.
Right. And I always tell people it's awesome that we can get on the computer and Google anything that we want to. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword because we don't always know where the information's coming from.
Yeah. So what's kind of the most common thing or something that's popped up frequently that is misinformation that somebody has brought to you and you've had to kind of break it down and um, correct them or
So like probably my favorite thing that I hear like way more than I ever thought that I would hear is people ask me if bananas are bad for you, like all the time.
oh my
And
gosh.
I never like coming out of school, the first time I heard that, I was like, what? And then I kept hearing it over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think, the carbs, because everyone hates carbs right now.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where it comes from. But I hear that a lot. And then just with any fad diet, like keto or intermittent fasting, those kinds of things, which can be helpful for certain groups of people. It's just, in the media, basically they say, oh, it's good for everyone. And that's not really true. So,
Yeah. 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 It's this weird thing to where recently now people have been saying fruit is bad for you.
yeah.
And I believe there was actually some kind of doctor who was on some podcast, some popular podcast too, and he was talking about how fruit was bad for you. And I just wanted to run my head through a wall listening to it. 'Cause
It
just
like makes me cringe. I'm like, oh no.
and yeah, it makes me cringe, and it's just mind blowing that like some of these people with super big platforms can't
Mhm.
get somebody who's actually credentialed and knowledgeable to come on there and talk about nutrition.
Right. Yeah. I would have to agree with that.
Yeah. So I guess what is your approach then when it comes to like you hear this misinformation and you kind of explain it to them? Like I feel like you have to kind of maybe not tiptoe around it, but you have to like gently introduce like that their previous ideals were wrong or they're incorrect. So how do you kind of approach that with the individual?
So what I always try to do is kind of figure out where they're coming from. obviously where they heard that from, and then what their thoughts are on it, because I never want to like jump down someone's throat like, oh, I'm the expert and that's wrong what you think, and
Yeah.
that whole thing. So we use a lot of motivational interviewing. That's kind of how we counsel people. And so I think with all of that, the most important thing is like listening to what that person has to say and their beliefs, and then kind of meeting them in the middle and coming up with solutions together, not just telling them, this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do.
Yeah, I love that, because it's this thing where if someone presents you an idea or something that they believe to be true, and you just hop in and say, no, you're wrong, like they're going to dismiss you and probably dismiss everything else that you say going forward, because they
Right.
almost feel like attacked, or like you're attacking their intelligence or something like that.
Yeah, and you have to think too, for a lot of people, I think going to a dietitian and talking about your habits and your food choices, that can be scary for people. And so the last thing that you want to do is like push them away even further by telling them that they're wrong. So
Yeah. I think a lot of people, when they think about talking to a dietitian, they think once they start to name foods that they eat, often too, that they're gonna hear like, oh, that's bad for you. Oh, that's bad for you. Oh, you shouldn't eat that. And they almost feel like guilty. Like I'm not a dietitian yet, and I can't even tell you how many times I've gone to like a family event, and my aunts or uncles have been eating something. They're like, oh, don't look over here. Don't look at me eating this. And I'm like, I don't care.
I know. I think that I've come to the conclusion that people probably watch what I eat and pay attention to what I eat when I'm out more than I pay attention to anyone else's. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it's funny because I feel like it's dietitians, the people who actually are knowledgeable in these areas. They're the ones who are more flexible usually with what you're
Mhm.
eating. Like they're not the ones to demonize this food or demonize that food and say, don't eat that, don't eat this. They're the ones that are like, okay, I mean, you can have it, if it's something that's super high calorie, maybe moderation, but we're usually pretty laid back about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think sometimes we get the food police. People think we're the food police, and that's really the opposite of what we are. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that primarily comes from the media. I think the media has kind of turned into the food police, and then
right.
people kind of think dietitians are kind of behind that message when they really aren't.
Yeah, yeah. We're on the other side of that. So,
Yeah. So what are some other kind of like the second biggest struggle that you see like with the clients that you work with? Um, Go
so
ahead.
and I see a lot of different things just because there's a lot of different types of people that I work with. Another common thing that I see is people under eating. So it seems I think for a lot of people, it seems counterintuitive. But when I really sit down and look at what people are eating, and we can test metabolism at our practice. And so sitting down with someone, looking at what they eat, looking at, the calories and the macros of that, and then comparing that to how many calories their body's burning in a day. That's kind of how I explain that.
Mhm.
And and people think, if I eat less, then I'll lose weight, but that's not always the case. So that's another pretty common thing that I see.
Yeah, and is that pretty common in pretty much all populations, or is there a certain population that you see it more often?
Not necessarily. I see it in kind of across the board. Usually like obviously the kids that I work with, I don't typically see that. But with adults, especially people that have kind of yo-yo dieted or have been trying to lose weight for a long time, that kind of thing, I see that a little bit more often.
Yeah. So how do those conversations usually go when you talk to them and kind of bring the idea that you probably need to start eating more, and it's somebody who has been like chronic yo-yo dieting? How did that conversation go? Is it hard to get them to buy in?
It can be. So I try to kind of go about it like, let's just try this. And honestly, testing people's metabolism helps tremendously because I actually have a number there, and then we can compare it to what they're eating. And so it's kind of hard to not connect those two. So that helps a lot. And a lot of times I will tell people, like, let's just give this a shot for, this short amount of time, and we can see how you feel. And, looking at things like energy and how they feel, throughout the day, and their hunger and satiety, those indicators can sometimes be a lot better short term than just the number on the scale.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think having the actual BMR calculator, or actually testing their BMR, probably helps out a ton, because like you said, when they see that number, it's just more concrete. It's almost like proof to them that they are burning that many calories, when if you don't have that number that's actually tested and you're just going off of like an equation, you have to like, I think there's little bit of misbelief in there, or not as much faith in that actual number that's correct. So yeah, I definitely think that would probably help out a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So do you kind of like have like another meeting with them, like after a couple weeks, a few weeks, and then kind of reassess those things that you talked about?
Yeah, so usually I see people for actually an extended amount of time. So typically, when people come in for the first appointment, it's just a general health assessment. We talk a little bit about their health history, what their goals are, how we can help them get to those goals, any struggles or challenges that they have, typical foods that they eat. And then we basically put together like a game plan. And so, like I said, typically people will come back for follow-ups weekly, and then kind of taper off to bi-weekly or monthly as they either reach their goal or get closer and kind of feel like they are confident in themselves to have a little bit more, can handle it on their own a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly. So the people who come to you, are a lot of them typically completely new to like paying attention to their nutrition at all, or do they usually have some type of history behind that?
So I get a mix of both. So there's obviously people that have tried like every fad diet in the books. They've tried calorie counting, macros,
Mhm.
Weight Watchers, intermittent fasting, keto, all that stuff. And then I have some people that have never seen a dietitian before and have never really paid much attention to nutrition and are just getting into it. So it's cool to kind of see both sides of that and to help people in wherever they are on that journey.
Yeah. So, what kind of approach do you usually take with your clients? So, I know like tracking macros is like the big thing now. Like, do you take that kind of approach? Take just like a general calorie goal, or maybe just like giving them like a meal template and try to aim for this template every day? Like, how do you kind of go about that?
Yeah, so everyone's a little bit different, and just depending on what that person needs. Some people just want, to work on their habits and learn more about nutrition, and that can help them on their journey. For most people, though, we create customized nutrition plans, and we look at the amount of calories as well as macros, and then we use an exchange system. And so we use like starches, meats, fruits, vegetables, that kind of thing. And then people can, swap things out and kind of get a feel for what the right amount of food and the right nutrients feels like. And then what we want to do is kind of guide people into intuitive eating from that. And really, that nutrition plan, even though it seems like, I mean, it is very structured, the goal of that is to get people on the right track so that they know what their body feels like when it's getting what it needs, and then kind of lead them into the intuitive eating so they can make choices without being super structured.
Yeah, so I'm sure, like, I wanted to ask you, like, what are some of the things that you hear from these clients when they are under eating for a long period of time, and then they actually implement the plan that you give them, and they're able to eat more? Like, how do they feel? Like, what are some of the things that they've told you?
So usually when I tell them, like when they look at it and they're like, this is more food than I'm eating, I think they're like, this girl doesn't know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Usually within like the first week or so, people are like, I feel so much better and I have so much more energy. And so that's like, honestly, having more energy and feeling better is the best thing that I can hear, just because I think for anyone, if you have more energy, that gives you more life, and you have the opportunity to do a lot more. Um, and so people, the more we work together and they start seeing results, the trust definitely builds. So
Hmm.
that's cool to see.
Yeah. And then do you ever have people who they come to you and they say they want weight loss, they say they want to lose weight, and then you end up saying, okay, well, we're probably in a spot where we have to increase food. They end up increasing food and feeling better, all of those things that you just mentioned, and then they realize that they actually don't really care about losing weight. Does that ever occur?
Yeah, that does happen. And sometimes, people I think come in and, you know, I think there's a large population of people that always want to lose weight. But I think there's a lot to be said for just feeling better and having more energy, and also like being more confident in your body. And that's something that I work on with people too, is, positive self-esteem and positive body image. Because genetically, some people aren't meant to be as thin as others. And again, with media, I think that's sometimes a hard thing for people to realize, that it's okay to not be like stick skinny or to be a huge muscular guy, but to be happy with, where you are and all of the amazing things that your body does for you every day.
Right, right. I really love that because I think there are some situations where weight loss is I guess necessary for optimal health, but there are so many situations where it's not, where people, they just want to lose the last 5 pounds. They just want to lose the last 10 pounds because they think if they lose those 5 to 10 pounds, they'll somehow feel 100 times more confident than what they are. But a lot of times it's not the case. I've found that when when you actually are fueling yourself and you're able to do more and
Mhm.
feel better, like through your day-to-day activities or in the gym, um, that's what boosts your confidence, not really actually losing the body fat.
Yeah. And I think like as in our field, that's a really cool thing to see, in just people, being more confident and happy with where they are and in their bodies.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not the type of person to where like um if you say you want to lose weight, I'm not going to say, okay, you shouldn't be losing weight. Like if you want to lose weight, it's perfectly fine. Everyone can have their own goals and their own preferences on what they want their body to look like. But I don't think it shouldn't be viewed as some kind of like secret key to like having the best life possible. Like your life's not going to change that much if you're just like a size down or if you lose, a couple inches in your waist. It's not going to be that different. So I really like that you talked about that you include that kind of approach to just being more confident in yourself, regardless of if your weight changes or not.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's so many messages out there that are the opposite of that. So I think it's always good to, have a positive stance on that and to help people in that way.
Yeah. So you've done some work with the Charlotte Hornets, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So what kind of work did you do with them? Because I think that's super cool. I'm a huge basketball fan, so
Yeah.
I'm curious to see like what your role was with them, how much contact you had with them, and what you did.
Yeah. So I guess it was last summer, because the NBA and sports and everything's been kind of weird with COVID. But basically, I started working with the team last summer, and I actually do corporate wellness with the organization, the Hornets organization. So every other week, I would be on site working with people just in corporate, so in like sales and that kind of thing. And then I started working with the actual players. And so kind of what my role was to get the players to where they needed to be when the season started. So most of them knew like what a good weight, like where they felt best playing.
Hmm.
Either they knew or their coaches wanted them at a certain weight. And so some of them needed to lose a little bit of weight so that they could be a little bit lighter on their feet. Other players needed to gain some weight so that they were bigger in the position that they were in. And so I worked with them in kind of the same thing, creating customized nutrition plans for them and working through, the challenges, because they practice a lot, they travel a lot. Um, a lot of them, don't necessarily want to cook. So getting
Yeah.
creative and finding ways to get the foods that they need from other sources, whether it's a chef or even ordering out, I went through a lot of the places that they liked, and found things that, okay, this can fit into your diet, or maybe this is a better choice than that. So
Yeah. So did you have kind of like weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings with them as well? Or was it more spaced out or?
yeah, so it's a little bit more spaced out just because of their practice schedule. But I did a lot of metabolic testing with them, and then building their nutrition plans and going through that with them. And one of the cool things is I worked pretty closely with other members of their like medical team, so their trainers, and they have people that cook for them down there and people that make shakes. So for like half of their meals of the day, we're typically at the arena. And so that was a little bit easier to control because someone else was eating it, or not eating it, making it, and
Mhm.
you just had to eat it. And so that helped a lot with kind of the accountability, because, we had trainers and coaches that were also helping them stay on track.
Yeah. So did you do any kind of analyzing of like a 3-day food log of them or anything like that?
Yeah. Yep.
So what were some things that you kind of found from doing that?
They love like DoorDash and ordering out. And so there was like, I knew the players that liked certain places or certain foods. A lot of them loved Chipotle, which I was fine with. You
Mhm.
can get a lot of good options there. And for a lot of the players, since a lot of them are pretty tall and they're burning so many calories exercising, one of the challenges was finding enough sources of healthy food to get them to the calories that they needed. So that was kind of a puzzle that we
Yeah.
figured out, but that was something that I would see a lot. Like, yeah, maybe you're hitting the calories that you need, but if it's from like a whole pizza and like a cheeseburger and fries, maybe that's not the best choice.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's probably a huge struggle because like what if you remember off the top of your head, like what's like the highest amount? Because you said you did like PMR testing on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what was like the highest number that you found from one of the players of like how many calories they needed per day?
So some of them got up to like 5,000, which is a lot of calories.
Yeah.
You can imagine. So yeah, in thinking, I mean, I'm only 5'2", so I obviously
Hmm.
don't eat 5,000 calories in a day. And so I think one of the things, like as a dietitian, I notice myself sometimes putting things that I like to eat on people's nutrition plans, but multiplying that by however many, I had to get creative and kind of outside of my own box to figure out how to get all of those calories in.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure that's a huge struggle. There were times where like I was trying to put on weight just and I'm 5'9". Sometimes I say 5'10" to make myself feel better about myself, but like I'm like 5'9". I'm not a huge guy and like I had to eat almost 4,000 calories a day to like continue to put on weight to build muscle and like
Right.
I can imagine how many calories, like someone like LeBron James or somebody that size requires with their activity. It would just be insane.
Yeah, yeah, and that's in as far as like men go, especially with the muscle building, that's one of the things that I see is it can be almost as hard for people to get in enough calories from healthy food to build muscle as it can be for people to change their diet to lose weight. Like, it's changing your body is difficult.
Yeah. So, what were some strategies that you kind of recommend to them or would recommend to somebody who does need to eat that many calories to either maintain their weight or gain weight?
So one of the things, especially with the players that I did, which was easy because I worked with the trainers, was utilizing like protein shakes. So I could get a lot of protein in, I could get some fruit, I could get some fats with, flax seeds or chia seeds, hemp seeds. We could get a lot into a shake, and all they have to do
Yeah.
is it. And so for people that were trying to gain weight, I would put them on like gainer shakes that were higher calories. And the
Yeah.
guy that I needed to lose weight, they were on a different type of shake. And they would blend them all up down in the training room, and they'd have their names on them. So it was super easy. But just looking at like calorie dense foods, and also getting in, if someone can't eat a huge meal, splitting it up throughout the day, I think can help a lot. So getting in snacks that are a little bit higher calorie that, maybe people shy away from because they're high calorie, that can help people get that need to gain weight or build muscle, that can help them with that.
Yeah. So what would be, sorry, I was kind of like smiling or laughing a little bit when you were talking because my dog's back here and she is snoring. So
Oh, it's all good.
I just couldn't stop laughing. But what were some of like, what would you say your top like 3 to 5-ish foods would be that are high in calorie but nutrient dense?
Ooh, high in calorie but nutrient dense. So one of the things, like especially looking at macros, if people have a hard time getting protein in, I do recommend like a protein shake or protein powder. I think even for me, when I 2 years ago looked at my macros, protein was hard for me to get in. So adding a shake is like a super easy way for me to get protein in, and you can make them low calorie if if you're not trying to gain weight.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. Quinoa is, for the amount, is actually higher in calories than something like brown rice. So that one can help. Healthy fats, they pack in a lot of 9 calories per gram of fat as opposed to 4 calories for protein or carbs. So things like avocado, I love flax seeds. They have the omegas, the fiber. So those are another good one. I'm a big lover of eggs, maybe because I have chickens, I'm biased.
Maybe.
but it has, you have the protein, and then you can get some healthy fats and a lot of different nutrients from that as well.
Yeah. And I think eggs are easy to mix other things in there too that might be, more calorie dense as well.
Right. They're super versatile and they're inexpensive. It's a super inexpensive protein source. So.
Yeah. So did any of the athletes that you worked with, did they have any like weird habits when it came to their food? Because I always hear stories about like some athletes, they like to eat candy before the game or during the game or something. Did any of your
Yeah.
athletes have anything like that?
Yeah. So, well, some of them, like, I would ask how their stomach typically feels or what, like during a game or during practice, and also what their habits are before. And some of them would tell me like what they ate before, and maybe it was a greasy meal and then not feeling
Hmm.
good. So then they didn't want to eat before the games. And so kind of explaining to them that it was probably the fat and adjusting things. I also had a couple people that wanted to be lower carb, but then would eat candy at night. So that I had to break that one down too, and
Yeah.
experimented with getting carbs in throughout the day, and then magically they didn't want candy at night. So yeah.
Yeah, I do find, or I've like heard of athletes, they'll just want to just go into their workouts or their games like completely fasted to just avoid the issue of having like any kind of GI discomfort or anything like that when they're performing.
Yeah. And I have a sensitive stomach, and especially I was a diver in college. So I don't know if it was the workouts or the spinning and flipping that would make me a little nauseous. But like kind of problem solving and what foods to eat. So my go-to, ironically, was bananas, because they're easy on your stomach. They give you some carbs. So working with any athlete, whether it's a professional athlete, amateur, a high school athlete, in figuring out what their body will tolerate, and definitely experimenting during practice and not during a game, that can be really helpful and really help their performance and help them feel better during those times too.
Right, right. I'm glad you brought up that last point about doing it during practices and not during games. Like if you're going to experiment with different things you're not used to, definitely do it during the practice. You don't want to do it during an important game, especially in the playoffs or anything like that. Um,
Right.
so you kind of talked a little bit about it with kind of one of the athletes wanting to do low carb, then eating candy at night, which just made me think of like, did you have any athletes who had maybe some kind of nutritionist that they knew that told them certain information that, because I know some of these nutritionists that do work with professional athletes, they don't necessarily give them the best advice. Did you have anything like that?
Yeah. So not with the Hornets, but with other professional teams in Charlotte. I've had like, you know, athletes here and there from those teams, and I have seen that. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I have seen that, or having like calories really low. So I don't want to go into what teams, but
Yeah,
having
yeah.
calories really low. And so again, metabolic testing can really help, you know, like, okay, here's what the numbers are. Let's just try this. And I have gotten a lot of questions about doing fasted endurance sports. And the research is mixed on it. And so just kind of working through that and again, experimenting during practice. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's okay.
But again, experimenting during practice and not when you know, it's like a game or a race.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know like there was something that came out recently. I think it was LeBron James's trainer or nutritionist, and just he was kind of giving an idea of what he has LeBron eats, and he just kept using the terms like, oh, we just keep it really light and clean. We just keep it really light and clean, like before and after games. And I just know, like, I've heard of other athletes too. I think like Tom Brady's nutritionist has some kind of weird, like, non-science based recommendations for him. So I feel like that's kind of an issue with professional athletes, but it's not their fault. Like, that's just not their specialty. So how would they know?
Yeah, and I really try to work with people, and because everyone's body is different, and
Hmm.
so if people are more comfortable and really do feel like their performance is better doing something that, you know, there's mixed research on, I'm not going to tell them like you can't do that. But
Yeah.
I think really exploring and kind of experimenting can help people, especially athletes, figure out what's going to be best for their body.
Right, right. So I feel like we kind of covered like all the questions that I had written down that I wanted to ask you. So I guess what are there any kind of like key takeaways that you would give to somebody who is trying to like fuel for performance, like your top one tip?
My top one tip for fueling for performance. Oh, that's a hard one because I guess it depends on the sport, but I think probably the biggest thing is to listen to your body. I think that's something that we have all kind of gotten away from, especially like I grew up having to finish my plate, which now, you know, we know that that's not really the best thing to be doing.
Hmm.
And so we kind of lose that intuitive eating, but our bodies really do tell us so many things, and our bodies are always trying to communicate with us. And so I think if people can take a step back and listen to like what foods they're eating make them feel, I think that can help really everyone's health.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So where can the audience find you on, like if you're active on social media at all, on Facebook or wherever?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram at Dahlia _the dietitian. And then the company that I work for, we have a website as well. It's tntgetfit.com.
Okay, and they can go on there and apply or fill something out to be able to work with you or to work with any of the members of your team.
Yep. So there's you can go in and request for an appointment or a health assessment, and it's cool because we do telehealth and in person now. So that website kind of talks about everything that we do.
Cool, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and talking. I was super
Yeah.
excited to have you on, and I appreciate you taking the time, you know.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I guess we'll just end it here, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.